Call this work session to order. This work session is going to be on possible military downsizing. It's on the record, so if we'll start with you.
George Michaelis, Municipal Manager.
Julia Tucker, Assembly Council.
Ernie Hall, Assembly.
Amy Domboski.
Bill Evans.
Tim Steele.
Elvie Bridger.
Big training. George.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for changing your schedule on such a short notice to allow this briefing. We felt that it was extremely important that the Assembly be notified as soon as possible, and also be notified of what some of the possible consequences could be, and then what efforts we're envisioning going forward to hopefully make a good case as to why a troop reduction here in Anchorage, Alaska is not a good thing. So just a little background. As you know, all the military services over the years have had booms and busts. Right now, because of sequestration and other things, the military is under a mandate to reduce its end strength. End strength being number of people basically assigned to the organization. The Army.
Is that by 1 October?
I'll give you all the dates right in just a second. So the Army has decided that they need to take about 120,000 troops, and they measure troops basically in what they call brigade combat teams, or equivalents. And the reason for that is that the brigade combat team is basically the fighting force, and they can mass a bunch of brigade combat teams together from different locations to a particular point and put a structure over it and basically fight battles. So we have in Alaska 2 brigade combat teams. If you looked at the 120,000 reduction that they're looking at, and they're looking at making this happen by the end of fiscal year 2017, then what that means is that there's going to be an awful lot of these brigade combat teams that are equivalents, that basically may go out of the full structure. And the way that they're planning on doing this is they've looked at 30 installations throughout the Army, and they're going to make determinations as to what forces from which locations will be reduced. In Alaska, we have 2 brigade combat teams. We have the Airborne Brigade Combat Team here at Fort Rich, and we have the Stryker Brigade Combat Team at Fort Wainwright. They're looking at a possibility, and I keep saying possibility because decisions haven't been made as of yet, of 5,300 from Fort Rich, and a possibility of 5,800 from Fort Wainwright. Now, the decision could be none at all. The decision could be Fort Rich only, it could be Fort Wainwright only, or it could be both. That's decisions yet to be made. Out of the 30 installations that they're focusing on, they've done an environmental impact statement primarily dealing with the parameters associated with their ability to function Army-wide with reductions. They have found no significant impact in this environmental analysis as it pertains to the reduction associated with each one of the communities associated with these particular installations, except for one thing. They did highlight that in all cases it would be a significant socio-economic situation for the communities involved. Obviously, if 5,300 military members was to basically go away from Fort Rich, and all associated family members with that, that's a big hit. That's a really big hit. So what the Army is doing to make sure that they understand what the situation will be in each community, they're having listening sessions. And these listening sessions are taking place throughout the Army installations, primarily within the communities. They've already had, I think, 4. They've done Fort Sill, they've done Fort Polk, they've done Lewis McCord. So they've done those 3, and there's one other one in Texas that they've done. But the bottom line is The onus is on the community to step up front and to present from the community's perspective impacts or any type of information at all that would be helpful to this team that's coming around that's going to make a recommendation to the leadership of the Army of what needs to be cut. They're going to be visiting us on the 23rd of February, and they'll be visiting Fort Wainwright, i.e. Fairbanks, on the 24th of February. Now, I've met with the Army. I had a long telephone conversation, and then I also went to a meeting with the military this week. And they basically went through the whole parameters. And from my own, experience in the past, these days, long past, but the bottom line is the military cannot advocate for the reduction or not. In other words, the leadership at Fort Richardson cannot advocate that the troops not be reduced. What they can do is educate the decision makers or this team as to what capabilities they have here in Alaska and what facilities they have and how they're organized and basically how they train and those type of things. But they cannot advocate. So what's been happening throughout the United States where these installations are affected, the local community basically has formed a group of groups, and they, on the community behalf, have basically forged the way and made presentations to this group that's coming from the Department of the Army. As an example, I went ahead and got what certain places did. In one particular place, they had an all-day session where they'd bring in different key stakeholders from the community, and they'd give a short presentation, basically what impacts would occur. And then they had in the evening a listening session where the community at large could come. One organization, basically one community, what they did is they had a big foray in the evening where they basically presented on the community's behalf. There's all kinds of ways of doing it and all kinds of show and tell methods. What we've done is I went through and identified who I think all the key stakeholders are in the community, and there's a bunch, as you can imagine. Communicated with the mayor, and the mayor has authorized us to hire on a contract someone to help us put together the effort. And so you'll receive more information on that. But the bottom line is every community is going to be doing something, and every community is going to be claiming basically the negative aspects of the social and economic impacts. They're all affected. We're affected. Fairbanks is going to be affected. Obviously, some places more than others, but the bottom line is it still is a major negative impact for a community. So just so that you know, some of the focus areas that they're interested in infrastructure. What kind of infrastructure do we have around here that basically can support the military? They're also interested in the military's infrastructure. Is it going to be costly to maintain, to repair? What kind of condition is it in? Do they have adequate housing and billets on base as well as off base? They're looking at such things as community's investment. What kind of investment has the community, various organizations, etc., done to enhance the military members, either their mission or enhance their quality of life, their education, their medical resources, recreational activities, and things like that. So those are all things that are important in the decision-making process. So to let you know some of the key players that have been identified that will be coming to a meeting at 2 o'clock on Tuesday in the Mayor's Conference Room. There'll be AEDC, the Visitors Bureau, also the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Eagle River Chamber of Commerce. We've also invited the the regional hospital and Providence Hospital leadership. We've invited the school district leadership as well as the university and APU. We've also invited the Armed Services YMCA. We've invited the commissioner of the Department of Veterans and Military Affairs, the acting adjutant general, and his representatives. So that's just to name a few. There are others on the list, but those are some of your key players. What's envisioned is that right now, until we put together a firm game plan, but something that I've seen work before, especially in dealing with a BRAC, and I think it's important that you understand that this is not a base realignment closure. This is a force reduction. And the difference between the two is that on a base realignment and closure, a BRAC, commonly referred to, that's when Congress is involved, and that's when Congress puts together a bipartisan committee, and they bring in also a civilian group, and there's all kinds of analyses that's done on behalf of the Army or whatever service, and they look at every single installation, and it's all about cost effectiveness and an elimination of an installation. This is not that. This is something that each service can do on their own, where they can actually reduce forces. They can reassign forces. But this is being handled by the Department of the Army based on the constraints that they've been given on their budget. And they have figured that in order to make the budget meet the requirements, that they have to reduce by 120,000 or 30 brigade combat team equivalents. So that's where we're at. I think that one of the things that has worked well when I was involved, both wearing the uniform and when I was here the last time as the city manager, when we had to go through a major BRAC for Fort Rich, where it was really on the chopping block. What we did is we got the community together. We certainly got the visitors bureau together. We put together a tour of all of the facilities that are available to our servicemen and their families, and showed them the schools, the school system. We also showed them the recreational activities that are available to military members and their families in the Anchorage area. We covered such things as the cultural aspects of Anchorage, where the museum and some of these other things. And I think, depending on what the will of the body is, the group that we put together, I think that probably is something that we probably should do again. I do think that that evening we should put together a very well orchestrated presentation, and we will basically select, I think, the folks to do the presentation covering various areas. But by the same token, we want to leave time so that the public at large can also make comments should they desire to do so. In that regard, what I've been reading on where it's been held in other places that have gone through this before us, they have had hundreds and hundreds of folks turn out for these listening sessions. And I don't think it's hard to imagine that if you have an awful lot of folks turn out, whether they say anything or not, it is a very good indicator that the community supports its military. And so I think it's very important, and I think that one of the efforts that this committee will be, this task force will be doing, is to do everything we can to get a real good turnout. We select the venue where it's going to be, and we select the time. We basically have them all day on the 23rd. I've communicated and talked to the Army about it as late as yesterday afternoon, and we could have them all day if we wanted to, and then plus the 2 to 3 hours for the listening session that evening. Or we can have part of the day and they'll take them for part of the day. All we have to do is tell them what we want to do, and then they'll do something with them the rest of the time. One of the concerns that I did express was that it would be helpful to us to know what the military is briefing these folks on as far as capabilities, resources, infrastructure, etc. Because during our presentation, what we need to do is reinforce that. So we would reinforce the importance of Alaska to the military. Remember, everybody is going to complain about the socioeconomic. What I think we need to do is show the positive. Yes, there's going to be, there's definitely will be an impact, and it's not going to be a good impact. But we don't have to dwell on it forever and ever. We'll just make a few points, highlight statistics, very brief, and then go into the part of what do we as a community do for our military, and what does Alaska as a total state have to offer for the total military here. And one of the things that I don't think that we should do, because it doesn't make any sense and it would be really self-defeating, is to consider ourselves in competition with Fort Wainwright or Fairbanks. What we should do is, between the two communities, come up with a presentation that mutually supports each and every one of us. Because the one major aspect that makes Alaska as important as it is, besides its geographical area, besides its 1.7 million acres of training area, not hampered with any type of endangered species, its varied terrain, et cetera, but one of the things that makes it very, very, very important is that you are mutually supportive of each organization. Because if you were to take a strategic look at this and you said, well, where is Alaska located? Well, it just so happens that Alaska, deploying from Alaska, you can get to any one of the hot spots that we have in the world today faster than anybody else. It's just a matter of where we're located geographically. If you say on top of that, you've got a Brigade North that has airfields, you've got Ladd Army Airfield that can deploy them, you've got Eielson, you also have the Fairbanks Airport, they can deploy. If you look at down here, you know, we certainly have Elmendorf, and we also have the International Airport that we can deploy our troops out of. The key is you can deploy them simultaneously, not in line, simultaneously. And that gives you more bang for your buck when they receive, when they're receiving on the other end at the hotspot. Plus, if you look at our port configuration, we're able to deploy the heavy equipment very easily, especially with the access that we have right now to JBER, where the equipment doesn't even have to come out on the roadways at all, and it can be very secure. We've got a rail network to get heavy equipment down here and unload it onto ships. So if you take the whole package, and oh, by the way, I didn't mention the air corridors that we have that's designated by FAA for the Air Force to be able to support training missions up here. And what we have that most other places don't have is the Air Force with us. Because the Army and the Air Force, regardless of where you go, is a fighting team. And concept is you train as you fight. And we train as we fight up here. So these are all things that, you know, we will bring out and reinforce certainly to these folks. But the point is that it would be nice to know what the Army's telling them, and I've already conveyed that. They shared with me that they would let us know basically what they'll be telling them about those type of things. So, I mean, that's it. You're certainly welcome to
Members
come.
have questions for you.
Yeah, you're certainly welcome to come to that 2 o'clock meeting when we try to get things organized. I've already farmed out a bunch of questions to some of these key players to start doing research to get the data necessary for our presentation. So I'm open to questions.
Mr. Holzer.
Well, actually, George covered a fair amount of what I was going to say, because I've been on the Civilian Advisory Board at Elmendorf for 20 years. And he's correct. We've got the greatest strategic location in the world. It goes all the way back to, I think it was General Billy Mitchell, who first went and said, you know, this is where the military's got to be. And if you look historically, look at the dollars and the time and the effort was put into putting the military here in the beginning of World War II. I mean, that was all out to get location here. For training, Anchorage, and I support exactly what George said, we're a unit, but they have very few places in the world that the training is available that's here, You got the Air Force, you got the military. Plus, when they do their training, they bring the Navy in. So we've got water, we've got land, we've got air. Any place else they go, they're really restricted. So we have got so much to offer to the military that it's unbelievable. As far as the assets that they've got here, they basically rebuilt Fort Ridge in the last 10 years, as well as Elmendorf. So they've got billions that they've spent out there. So, you know, I can see them really wanting to protect that. But I think the thing that, in addition to that, I mean, George, I think that's going to be primary in making a decision as far as the military is concerned. But in addition to that, what we've got that a lot of communities haven't is there's not a community in the nation that has a better relationship with their military than Anchorage, Alaska. We have always had just an incredible relationship and welcoming. In all of my years here, I can't even go back and give you an incident of an actual conflict between the military and the civilian sector, and that's not true in a lot of places within the nation. The Chamber of Commerce every year has a Honor the Military Day picnic. I mean, full board, go out. But what we have the ability to share with them is what we already do, not what we will do if you agree that it's important that they be here. But George, I think as far as the asset list and presenting a presentation, I don't think there's a community any place in the nation that has more on their asset sheet than we do right here.
The only thing I would say to that is, having gone through numerous bracks up here and also stationed and being involved in them, one of the things that it's certainly you need to show what you got. You need to show what great condition it is and everything. But if you think that the billions of dollars of investment to bring whatever that is up to the standard it is today is a major factor, it's a sunk cost. It's a sunk cost. In other words, it's been spent. And unfortunately, I mean, you know, that's the way they look at things. But it doesn't mean that you don't hone in on it because of that sunk cost. They're in great shape today, and so maintenance costs in the out years are going to be less. But again, it's
and what we've done in that is we have world-class housing for our military here. I mean, the money that's been expenditure on personal housing, it's amazing.
well, and they're also going to want to know, can you house in the community? Because there's no installation that is able to handle all the housing needs of their military members and families. In fact, usually they can handle about 1/4 and the rest of 1/3, and the rest is in the community. And we have that capability.
Well, but that's our weakness, George, is housing on the outside. But
Well, when you say it's our weakness, it's our weakness from the standpoint that a lot of the standards that the Army or the military holds what housing should look like, in some cases does not meet that standard. But the military is housed in our community at this time. The question would be, what's the capacity for growth? Because if you're going to make an argument that how great Alaska is, then you wouldn't make the argument that we don't want to stop, we don't want to have units leaving us. The argument you'd make is, because of our capacity up here, training and everything else, you need to bring more troops up here. So.
what I'd like to say is I'd like to be involved one way or another. This community is very supportive. When I was retiring, I had been stationed all around the United States. I could have moved anywhere, done anything. I wanted to come here, mainly because of the relationship that the school district has with the military. And it's only gotten better over the years. But we've got, as you said, more retired people, more retired military up here, probably per capita.
And the other thing that they look at is what happens to an individual that's in the military when they retire?
Yes.
Or what happens to the individual when his term is up and he doesn't retire, but he just gets out of the military? And the answer here in Anchorage or Alaska, they find jobs. There's jobs for them, and that's important, by the way. That's one of the things that the military looks at.
They could even be elected officials or city managers, which is,
George,
a coveted position. But yeah, the relationship that we have is really good, and I would like to be involved. We have the VA, there's just all kinds of things.
So one of the things that we'll be asking is some type of resolution from the Assembly.
George, whatever you want. You know, I came up with the Air Force in 71, 26th of April 71, stepped off the airplane. I stayed here my whole military career for about 39 years in the military, both military and civil service. Everybody I talk to, they always want Alaska on their dream sheet. This is where every military person wants to end up, is here in Alaska. And they always want to end up at Fort Ridge or Chugiak, Elmendorf, where you're to live at. Same, a lot of this is in your area. I think you've got about 600 acres out there, owned by Kuna Corporation, that is beautiful land to put homes on. There's enough land here to put more homes. We've got to make sure the base and the people stay here. Because as Mr. Steele will tell you, we have the highest percentage of military of any state. Retirees stay here permanently. We'll keep it that way. Yes, Amy.
And I would just like to say, not only in the city of Anchorage, but in the state of Alaska, Chugiak River has the highest per capita population. But to go to the mission at hand, which is putting forward the best, strongest argument, which will resonate with this committee that's coming up. George, I would like to work proactively with you to develop that resolution, and maybe Chair Trainee and whomever else wants to join on, but I think you'll be able to help us highlight the points that you know will resonate with this group.
And we will be asking the borough, as well as Wasilla and Palma, to also participate, and the reason for that is they'd be affected as well.
When you look at the globe, we're located strategically anywhere in the world off this installation called Alaska. We can be anywhere in the world in a short amount of time. And that's something no other part of the United States can offer.
We
So
can
they
get there
need to
faster.
understand that. Yes, Ms. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this briefing, George. It's really important that we're having it. Has the administration decided who they're going to hire to help with this effort? Because we need to move things along.
We're looking at, there's a couple of different options out there. We haven't decided yet, but we're in the process of doing that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This work session is over. Thank you.